Hi, Lorraine. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I appreciate you being here. I look forward to our conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me. I love doing podcasts now. I'm getting used to doing
Yay,
podcasts.
great. So, Lorraine, I want to jump right in and ask you when did you first know that you're a writer?
Yeah, I've probably always been a writer, but the thing is, I've always kind of denied being a writer because I never thought I was good enough. Always comparing myself to other people. So I never actually took the chance to go ahead and just follow the passion of writing
Mm,
until quite recently, really, because I'd always put other things first. So I was always very much, I want to write, but then I'll do photography and do a photography class, and then I'll go into art and do
mm,
this, that, and the other, doing different art things like painting techniques and things. But of course, everything kind of stopped at COVID
mm,
when the world all went a bit mad and my art classes were basically cancelled, and I had no creative outlook apart from writing,
wow.
which is the thing that I'd always wanted to do, and I'd always put it off. And I think maybe I'm not the only one, but a lot of people I think kind of put off things that they really want to do for whatever reason, the
Mm,
feeling of failure or whatever it is. But, after having been inspired by a few different things, it was time to just let that go and just be creative and just write for writing's sake.
mm.
And the ideas for my series kind of spiraled from that, really.
Wow, thanks for sharing in a nutshell kind of where you're at today and what led to you being in this place. I think a lot of people can probably relate to what you just shared. I've heard other stories of people as well, especially during COVID, kind of reconnecting with what's really important to them and doing this thing that you've been putting off or denying, like you said.
It's very
What?
silly, but your own brain, I think, puts these blocks
Mm,
to things. And it was crazy because I was being creative in so many other ways.
mm,
But the dream that I had, that I've always had since I was young about being a
mm,
writer and writing books, was always
mm.
the thing that I pushed further away.
Wow. And now, fast forward, you've just published your second book. Congratulations!
Thank you.
It's part of a trilogy.
Yeah, it's a trilogy, but within a wider series. So the
Okay.
series itself is called The Chronicles of the Endless War, which is obviously quite a big, expansive title, but it means that there's a lot of scope for many, many stories because it's based in a world containing magic.
Mm,
So you could technically have a lot of books in this world, and I
mm.
am getting more and more ideas as I'm writing. And that's the great thing about writing. Sometimes you don't know the end point, but it's quite a lot of fun getting to that point when you're using your imagination to get there.
And now that you've actually given yourself permission to write, do you find that it's quite generative, as in the ideas just come to you and there's a certain flow, or not? How do you experience the
Yeah,
process?
the first, well, when it came to the first book, so in COVID times, I had written at least like a book and a half's worth of writing, but it was kind of like all over the place. And because I didn't have the experience of actually writing it down as a book, the beginning, middle, end sort of thing, I kind of had to restart the book. Um,
Great.
all the ideas that I had, all the creativity that I'd kind of splurged out in COVID, I had to kind of rein it in and pull it back a little bit, and have more of a sort of order to it, and then changing characters around and seeing what worked. So
Mm,
the first book's very much like a sort of, it was a bit of an experiment because obviously having never written a book, everything is a bit trial and error.
mm,
But then as I'm going on, more and more ideas sort of come into it.
Hmm.
It's a weird, for me, the ideas are not the problem. It's a lot of people say, oh, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. But the ideas always come to me. I don't know what it is, but I've always got idea. It's just the time to write it down. And it's just like I've got a lot of notebooks and I've got a lot of things in my head. It's actually, I'm waiting for the new technology, which you just plug into
Oh
your
yeah.
head.
It will make it a lot easier. Yeah. So I wanted to ask about that. The routines or the rhythms or the habits or structure that support you. You're also a business owner with your husband. You've got the bar and the restaurant that I'm sure
Mm.
takes up a lot of time and energy and focus. So how do you weave the writing in between all the other things that you need to do?
Yeah, it was difficult. When it was COVID, we only really had my son's homeschooling to deal with and the meals. But then, of course, when you go back to work, obviously I had this in my head, like, oh, I need to get this down, I need to get this down. But then you're having to work. So the routine gradually is built up because I write quite a lot in the mornings. So when my son heads off to school, that's when I sit down with a cup of tea and basically start to type up stuff or get things down. But also, I have noticed now that I'm writing a lot at night as well in my notebook. So I'm kind of like going to bed and sitting up with the light on. My husband will be rolling over trying to get to sleep, and I'm sitting there going, "Rrr," writing crazily. But that's quite good because you're kind of emptying your head at the end of the night and you don't have the distractions of social media or other things. And then the following morning, I'm there, I can type that up. So it's kind of, late night, early morning seems to be working out for me. But it has changed quite a lot because I used to write, and I still can write a lot during the weekends or when I'm not at work. Um, just taking a few hours here and there just to kind of get into it. And I do read back my stuff quite a lot as well. There's different ways to write, and I'm called a pantster. So a
Okay.
pantster is somebody that doesn't necessarily plot everything. I kind of write things on the cuff and let things go a little bit. But plotting kind of plots, I can kind of write the scenes and then put them into the book. So it's I think for new writers, you're learning your own style. I think that's one of the hard things
Mm.
when you're starting out. You're kind of having to
Mm.
gauge what works for you, what doesn't work for you, because what works for me certainly won't work for people that like to plan and have it all regimented.
Mm.
And yeah, and some advice that I'm seeing online about if you're a new writer, do this. And I'm like, I don't do that.
And I guess that's also part of getting to know yourself and then giving yourself permission to write in the way that works for you and not following someone else's way of doing it. So was that part of the process for you as
I
well?
think I'm still learning that. And, the book one was only published in November 2023. So within the last, definitely like 3, 4 years, like I'm still learning the process and I'm still
Mm.
learning the best way to be because, as well as writing your first draft, which everybody says, write your first draft, just get the words out, just complete the book. Don't edit, don't go back, don't do this, don't do that. I go back quite a lot and I recheck things because I quite like to kind of confirm that it's reading smoothly and the plot's coming and the characterization is good. So I do read a lot back and up to, in stages just to
Mm.
make sure I feel like it's, and that's before the actual real editor comes on board and checks it. So yeah, it's very, it's a tricky process to get a handle on.
I know that you're part of a writing group, and what role did that play and still plays in building your confidence and also carving out your voice in this space?
I think it's really important when I was first starting out, I did feel like I needed help, within if I'm self-published and there's a lot of people that in my group, we're all self-published and we're called the Secret Scribes and there's 13 of us all together. So we're all like up and coming fantasy authors from around the world. And we
Mm.
communicate basically every day on our Discord channel. Before I met those guys, I was floundering a little bit because it's so nice to have that support and people just saying, "Oh, I'm in the same boat as you." And especially when you publish and you're trying to market your book, sell your book, finding those readers, it can be a bit depressing if you're every day you're getting a 0-0, nobody's buying your book. And, for me, after the kind of rush of the first book coming out and doing reasonably well for a new author, nothing big, it was about 50 or 60 books within about 6 months. So, but then it comes to a point when you're like, oh, how else do I do this? How do I get more readers? And the guys at the Secret Scribes, we're just, yeah, it's just that common thing of being creative and asking for help and sharing work, critiquing work. This is all kind of new as well. We're all kind of now some of us are on book 2, book 3, asking for advice. A lot of us are reading each other's stories. So that's been a really positive thing because it kind of backs you up thinking I'm not a bad writer and these guys can help me better, process. So I definitely think if you're a new writer, you have to find a band of people that are around about the same stage as you so that you can all support each other, basically.
Yeah, it really sounds like such a crucial part of the process, that support and validation and sharing. I think being a creative can be a very lonely
Yeah.
place to be in. It's you and the work, and there's a lot of thoughts that come in that can make it very challenging.
Yeah.
So being able to voice that and feel like you're not alone, you're not the only one feeling like
Yeah.
that.
And, I mean, we all go through our ups and downs at different stages. So, somebody might be really down about something and like, no, what about this? What about that? And throw some positivity on it to try and make things better. Because I do know that this time last year, in between, finishing book 1 and then getting ready to like finish writing book 2, I did have a little bit of a blue, like,
Mm.
ooh, moment where the imposter syndrome and the whole, is this ridiculous what I'm doing? All those like negative thoughts that you sort of feed yourself because
Mm.
because you do that as a human, I think. That basically was quite hard. But when I met the Secret Scribes guys last May, and I do feel like a lot more positivity from the shared experience of all of us, basically going through the same thing.
It's wonderful. Yeah, it sounds like a very, very positive group to be a part of.
Yeah, and we're working together as well. So last year we started writing a anthology. So
Mm.
we're all writing our own short stories. One of our authors is also an artist, so she's
Mm.
going to be doing some artwork with it. And another one of our writers does editing, so he's going to be doing the editing on the short stories. So it's
Wow.
very much a collaborative piece of work. So we're all quite excited about that coming out this year, I think. We've not got a
Awesome.
date on it yet, but hopefully summerish time.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. I wanted to know, yeah, I've two questions in my mind. The one is around what it's like being a female author in this
Mm.
space, in the fantasy world space.
Mm.
Yeah, what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started out reading fantasy, it was very male dominated, I think. And the names of writers, there's a couple that I'm thinking of. I remember picking up a Robin Hobb book and thinking, oh, it was by a male. Robin sounded like a male name. And then when you think of J.K. Rowling,
Mm.
initially, you might not necessarily know it's a female writer.
Mm-hmm.
And myself, I write under the name like L.M. Douglas,
Mm.
thinking that, male readers weren't necessarily going to buy into a female author writing fantasy because my fantasy books, they do have an element of romance in them, but they're not specifically romance books.
Mm.
There's so many genres in fantasy. You've got like dark, grim dark, you've got comedy, you've got romantasy, which is more romance based. But mine is sort of an epic fantasy. So it would be for males, females, a wide range of readers. But
Mm-hmm.
for some reason, when I started out writing, I did still feel like there was some sort of, I don't know, not anti-female writer, but just that you got on better if you were kind of male or nondescript, which is a bit silly now thinking about it, because since reading a lot more indie authors, the amount of female writers out there, there's so many, and
Mm.
it's really, and I think now the readers aren't so much interested in who wrote the book, if it's a male or female. I think they're just interested in the actual story and how it's written. So yeah, I think at the beginning I did tend to think it was quite male dominated, but I'm coming around to the fact is, yeah, there's a lot of female writers doing really, really well, and it's a positive thing, really.
That's great. And do you think at some point you will also start putting your name on the book?
It's hard to change your name
Mm.
when you've got a brand. The brand Lorraine Douglas is kind of there. But if I did want to write maybe in a different genre, I would maybe write Lorraine Douglas or Lorraine Moore. But I do know that a lot of people do use pen names,
Mm.
and also for different styles of writing. You've got like, was it Ian M. Banks and Ian
Mm.
Banks? He put the M in when he did the sci-fi stuff.
Mhm.
So there is an option if I go into a different type of genre that I would add a different name.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because I wonder that what that might do to the industry if you actually come in as a female author.
Yeah, I mean, for indie authors as well, I mean, it's very different, traditionally published and indie. So when you're an indie author, you have to obviously write your book, edit it, get it formatted for the print, upload it to whatever site you're going to sell it on. At the moment, I'm only on Amazon,
Mm.
but you have to make sure it's edited. So you're paying for the editor, you're paying for the cover, all that sort of stuff. So there's so much work involved. And I've forgotten your question. I'm just rambling. Yeah, it's there's so much to the whole package. It's
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to think of as well.
yeah,
A lot going on in the background, more than just writing the story.
yeah. And marketing. The marketing thing is another step up. I
Mm.
haven't quite mastered or investigated all that kind of stuff at the moment. I'm just kind of concentrating on the writing. But having like the event at the pub, and I've spoken to a book group, done podcasts. So it's just slowly building up the readership and hopefully have some, long-term fans
Mm.
from from doing these little bits and pieces.
I'm sure you have long-term fans already.
A few, yeah.
I also wanted to know what the impact of your environment is on your stories and the characters that you bring into your books. Living in Edinburgh, which is quite a
Mm.
mysterious city, how does the city influence your books or being living in Edinburgh?
Yeah, I think Edinburgh is a special place, and I think when people come here, when they visit here, they realise quite quickly how the history of the place kind of grabs you. And I've always loved history. My degree's in history, and I love like historical dramas on TV and documentaries and like, anything. My favorite program right now is the Shogun
Mm.
Netflix series, or the
Mm.
the Last Kingdom and things like that. Anything historical. So Edinburgh's got that in spades anyway. And there's different parts of Edinburgh that like I can go to and be inspired by the environment. I'm not that far away from the botanics.
Mm.
So when I need a bit of fresh air and a bit of green space, I go into the botanics. And there's definitely nature in my books because it's like a world where there's lots of magic and wildlife and trees. There's a power within the trees.
Mm.
So one of my characters talks to the trees. He talks leaf speak, and he's a young lad called Pilt. So whenever I kind of want to get some tree inspiration, it's just there. It's nice to just go for a nice walk and get that. And also, we're quite close to the sea. Certain aspects of my story are down by the shore,
Mm,
and on the water and things like that. So I think Scotland in general is a very a good place for inspiration.
I agree. Yeah, because I read about the mist. There's an element of mist in the book as well.
Yeah,
And so I wondered
but
about
like the
the
heart,
horror, the connection to the horror.
definitely.
Some of the listeners might not be familiar with the horror, but it's spelled HAAR, and it's this fog that comes over Edinburgh and kind of hangs over the city. And it's very much unique to Edinburgh.
Yeah, I didn't really think it was unique, but then yeah, like when I started writing, so in Grante's Guardian, the first book, we come into the new year and it's the bleak. The bleak is the cloud that the
Mm.
Queen has brought over the city to protect it, which is very much the Har, because the Har is that thick sometimes that you can't see that far ahead of you, and you can see it when you see it rolling in from the shore. I used to live on Leith as well, on Leith Walk.
Mm.
You could really see it then, but even where I am now in Cannon Mills, you can still have that feeling of the Hars just rolling in up the street, and
Mm.
it is quite magical and strange. So you have
Mm.
to use these things.
Yeah, that's great. So you draw, it sounds like you draw inspiration from a wide range of things, the environment that you're in, but then also what you read and what you listen to. Do you have any regular practices or things that help to sustain you? You mentioned going to the botanics. What other sort of rituals or rhythms, weekly or monthly rhythms, do you have to help
Uh,
sustain you and bring that inspiration?
I think even in my work, because you're meeting people all the time in the bar, so it's not that I'm using them as characters as such. I'm not, but your interactions with people, dialogue, trying to figure out, sometimes, how somebody walks or talks, you can get, you get that from it just into everyday interactions, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's I think it's just a lifetime of working with different people and
Mm.
reading is the main thing, yeah.
So in some way, it's the culmination of all of that, in some way collecting over years and years, and now
And
it
then it
coming
comes
into
naturally
fruition.
then. You're not really overthinking it. You're just letting yourself, on the typewriter just going for it and you can always edit later, you can always change things. I think yeah, just go with your natural, have your character in your head, have, who they are, and then, think about how they develop throughout the story and is it true to them? Because they become real people. That's the thing. When you're writing these people,
Wow.
they're real to me. So it's quite, you have to make sure that you give them the right
Mm.
phrasing, the right stances. They become ingrained in you, so you know who they are.
Yeah, and you carry them with you.
Definitely. They pop into your head when you're at work. You have conversations between each other. You're like, shut up, politely insane.
But what you said now reminded me of what I read in. I recently reread Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, where she talks about her journey to, yeah, also being a writer. And she used to work in pubs as
Oh,
well as a young person, and she would keep a little notepad with her, and if an idea comes to mind, she'll write it down, and it immediately made me think of that sort of
yeah,
it's this constant, it's this work that remains with you constantly, and every once in a while there's an idea that comes to mind.
yeah.
So it sounds like you've become a bit more, or a lot more actually, confident with being a writer and giving voice to what's within you. What you shared in the beginning around feeling like an imposter and all those thoughts coming. Do you still have days where you have those thoughts, and
Oh,
what do
yeah.
you do?
And I think, I mean, when I released book two, there was a great amount of interest, and the people that have read it have loved it and think it's even better than book one, which has been a real positive for me. But then, of course, when you're coming to like trying to finish book three and you're writing book three, all the worries that you've had for book one and book two are still there because you're thinking, oh my God, is this good enough? Is this what the reader wants? Is this what the character, is this what is really going to happen? Yeah, and I thought book three might be easier to write. But book one, I think, was probably now the easiest that I wrote because it was a lot more freeing.
Mm.
But I think, yeah, you just have to get into the groove and try and push the negatives back. But I do think a lot of writers struggle with each book as they go along is from what I can tell from my friends and the scribes, we're all a bunch of warriors. But we're all but the thing, yeah, we've got to remember we're doing it for us. So, and that's the thing I've got to remember. I'm writing for me because if I didn't do it now, I think I would be in a much worse place. I would feel like I wasn't doing what I meant to be doing. So there is that as well on the flip side. You know, you're writing for your readers, but I am also writing mainly for me because I enjoy it. And I enjoy reading back my work and fixing little things and, you know, figuring things out. You know, like the light bulb moments. I might have a plot where I need to get characters to a certain place, but I might not have worked that bit out. And then sometimes you just go for a shower or whatever, and you have that moment of, oh wow, that's it. Quick, write it down. Those things make my day really because your brain's just a wonderful thing, and it's just figuring things out without you even realizing it. But yeah, we all have those moments where we're like, oh.
Yeah, so it sounds like the continue doing the work despite having those thoughts
Yeah,
and acknowledging that it's a part of the process.
yeah, and try not to worry too much.
What helps you? You said that you get into the groove. What helps you get into that groove?
I don't know. I think it is just the habit of sitting
Mm,
at the laptop basically.
mhm,
But you know yourself when you're not in that creative mood. It's knowing not to force it as
mhm,
well. To like maybe instead go for a coffee with a friend or, you know, you don't basically bog yourself down if you're not feeling it. For example, like I'm actually writing a new thing, which my readers will probably be like, "Oh no, you need to finish book three." But this year in January, or well, it was actually Christmas Day, believe it or not, I started this new piece for a bit of fun because my husband and my son were, you know, they weren't getting up. So I thought, right, I'll just have a bit of fun and I'll type this thing up on Christmas Day. Like it's a couple of pages. And then I just got hooked. And when after the Christmas period finished, and this whole month, I've basically been working on this new book, which is related to the series, but it's a whole new book. So it'll be a standalone probably within the series, but it's kind of like made me enjoy writing. Like I know I really am enjoying book three, but it's each book and each set of characters have got their own qualities and things. And I think at this moment in time, I need to see this particular story through. I might not finish it. I might, you know, next month I'll probably feel guilty and jump back into book three again. But I think if you're a creative person, it's quite hard. Well, for me, it's quite hard to ignore certain things. You know,
mhm,
if I'm feeling inspiration, I'm just going to go for it.
mhm,
And
mhm,
that's what I'm doing with this particular
mm,
story. Maybe, I don't know if you do the same with painting. You kind of go, oh, I'm painting this, but that's not working out for me. Oh, I'll maybe try this piece or do something or sketch.
mm, mm,
I kind of think it's a bit like that. You could jump about a little bit and don't give yourself a hard time. If
mhm,
you're, I know I need to finish book three, but I'm trying
mm.
not to give myself a hard time about not finishing it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I find the same with painting, where forcing myself doesn't help, and sometimes stepping away from a project actually gives you that new fire and inspiration, and that's
Yeah,
exactly what you talk about now. And sometimes, yes, sometimes there's real deadlines, a work that's commissioned or an exhibition. But often I find when that's the case, that also creates some momentum and energy.
Hmm.
But yes, when you're busy with a project and you're just not feeling it, I tend to go where the inspiration is and where I'm finding that natural flow, because then it will inevitably spill over into this other project that
Yeah.
you want to finish.
And the thing about probably painting and writing is the more you do it, the easier it becomes, the better you become at it. The things that I was writing in COVID time are nowhere near what I'm writing now. And I know that in the future, I'll be writing
Mm,
hopefully better than even writing now. So it's just the continual process, I think, of doing
mm,
something makes you kind of see things better. And if this project that I'm on now is, opening up different things, in the end, I can see how it's going to develop the rest of the series without me having to worry too much that I'm not wasting time. I think that's the thing. It's just a like tangent, basically.
yeah, and I think it comes back to the creative life and looking after yourself as a creative. And in some way, what you're doing now is you're keeping that commitment to yourself to continue writing, regardless of what it is that you're writing.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to know if someone's listening and they've got this thing that it's been with them for a very long time, that they want to write but they've not pursued it, kind of the place that you were in before COVID, and they're starting to wonder if it's maybe too late, or if, yeah,
Never.
what would you say to that person?
Well, no, I don't. I do know quite a few indie authors that have started in their 60s. And,
Mm,
the thing about writing and probably art, like painting or drawing, is like I just don't think you could ever be too old to do it. And I think many people like. I mean, I'm kind of late to it because I'm in. Well, I'm 50, 50
mm,
next month, and it was like late 40s that I got the confidence to do it. So just give it a try. Good starting points for me were listening to other writers on podcasts.
mm,
Find your favorite writers. Try and find things that they've talked on or interviews. For fantasy, there's quite a lot of information out there on YouTube.
mhm,
There like a good starting point is the Brandon Sanderson YouTube videos where he's actually a lecturer and he's talking about plots and characters and things like that. And there's so much out there online. There's no real excuse not to kind of hunt it down. And there's a lot of self-help books as well.
mm,
I actually joined I paid for a course quite early on. I did a bit of research, and it was the self publishing show, and they run an indie conference not just for fantasy but for all genres. It's just for indie authors, and they run a conference every year. So I've been to that conference a couple of years in a row. I'm not going this year, but I did meet a lot of people, and mingling with other authors brings its own like questions and sharing, and that's been a really good experience as well, because you're also meeting like successful authors,
mm,
they're giving you advice. But yeah, researching everything properly, there's a lot of scammers out there as well, especially for the indie publishers. People that are like, oh, I can market for you, it's only going to cost you XYZ. I mean, I'm getting lots of those in my, like, not necessarily my Gmail, but on Twitter messages or Discord messages, just people
mm,
basically trying to give you services which are maybe questionable. So
mhm,
you have to have your eyes open, you have to have your brain on, to prevent being scammed, because it can happen. And as well, if you're indie published, some people think that they're basically it's like a there's what we call vanity presses. So it's not traditional it's vanity. So that's like, it's almost like a scammer. It's like,
Mm.
if you give us X amount of money, we'll do your editing for you, we'll do your cover for you, and it might cost you like £600 or something ridiculous like that. Whereas if you actually organize things yourself, you could actually save yourself a lot of money just by investigating how you did your own formatting, editing, all that kind of stuff. So I think anyone can do it on their own. You just ask for advice. Don't pay for services like that are going to scam you, basically.
Yeah, and I think that's the golden thread here is the power of community.
Yeah.
And how, if you've got that support around you, you've got people to ask and you're getting advice. And, I can see that you've already gathered so many things that you bringing this work to life.
Yeah.
And being
that's just
supported while you do that.
And that's just taken that's taken a lot of time because, and I think that's the other thing when you're starting out, you do compare yourself to the people that are already established. So somebody starting out now might be looking at this going, "Oh, she's got it sorted. I'll never get there." But I was there.
Mm,
So, and I'm at a certain stage now, and I can see that, there's more to come.
mm,
Whereas I'm looking at authors like way up there selling loads of
mm,
books, and I'm like going, "Oh my God, I'll never get there." But as long as you're on the ladder, I think you just take your one step at a time and try not to compare yourself to other people. It's
mm,
difficult, but you just have to. It's your journey really into the success that you want.
mm,
And some people might be happy just selling their books to their friends and doing that. I mean, I want more readers, so I know that my success level's a little bit. I'm aiming for a little bit higher.
mm,
But yeah, you just got to work out what it is important to you. Sorry,
mm,
my light's flickering there. I think the bulb's about to go. I don't know if you noticed that. But yeah, you've got to work out what level of success you want for you, and then
mm,
write those achievements down.
mm. Yeah, I think that's such good advice. Lorraine, thank you so much. I feel like
Thank
we're
you.
we're kind of at the end of our conversation, and I feel like I've learned so much about your process, and I think it's such an inspiration that you've really followed your heart and that pull and that dream, and now you've made it a reality. And I really look forward to seeing what's coming next for
And
you.
can I show you my books?
Yes, please.
So this is Grantia's Guardian, the first book, and we have the second book out is Grantia's Fury. So the
Beautiful.
third book out, hopefully this September as well.
Yay,
Grantia's Fate.
exciting. I'll put a link to your website in the show notes so
Oh,
people
thank
can
you.
click there if they want
It's been
to
really great
read.
talking to you.
Thanks so much, Lorraine.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Take care.